Steve Levy, the ESPN NHL play-by-play man and host, SportsCenter host as well. All right, Leaves, how did we get to this four-nation tournament? How did it come up, and how long has it been kind of in the works?
Not that long, Dan. We needed a spark. I think people have grown tired of the All-Star breaks for all the corporate sponsors and those kinds of things. I think the skills competitions are all getting old, and I think we needed some kind of spark. I think we saw and I say we, I mean the NHL and hockey saw the Olympics on the horizon, and let's do something. So that's the amazing thing about this four nations, but I think that this is a one-off. I don't think we ever see four nations again. This was a stopgap, despite how successful it was.
Oh, wow.
The NHL has already said they're going to do World Cup of Hockey, and that could be eight nations, 8 countries. So I think this is a one-off. I don't think we see four nations again in this exact format with the Olympics next year.
Do you think that's a mistake?
No, listen, the only downside, and we're really nitpicking because this thing was unbelievable, made for television, gimmicky, and we obviously got the right matchup in the end in the right places. There are still some great players. I mean, if you want best on best, Alexander Ovechkin's not there. David Pastrnak is not there. These are, outstanding players. There's 5 or 6 other guys. And listen, but this could have gone awfully wrong, right? We could have had the Finns and Swedes. And while they hate each other, they despise each other at least as much as America and Canada does. I'm not sure 9.3 million people would have tuned in the U.S.
I was wondering about this. If they did this again, could you see where there was a draft of Russian players? Each nation got to bring somebody, just so I can incorporate some of these great players. And maybe you don't want to recognize Russia, but you still have to recognize the players who play in your league. Could you have something like that? Would that work for these nations?
Something, absolutely, because you can't do another one of these tournaments without those guys. It's not then best on best. The draft is an interesting idea. I hadn't heard that. We've done world team before, right? So everybody other than, U.S., Canada, and so on. So I want to give Greg Wyshynski credit because he writes for ESPN.com. I don't know if it's his idea, but he told me about it. He broached the idea of a summit series so we can just get the U.S., Canada, okay, and are assured of that. And the 1972 Summit Series, people of our age, Dan, remember Paul Henderson scores the goal. They had a best of 8, and it was simply Canada against the USSR. I don't know how they got the best of 8. I don't know how that works. Doesn't make any sense, but things were different in 72. And so just because the U.S.-Canada thing was so good, but I'm with you. We need to incorporate everybody and have 2 spots, right? You want to have 2 roster spots for, players who are not American or Canadian or something along those lines. But I think we go to 5 or 6 or 8 nations, and you hope for the matchup we got in Boston on Thursday night.
Steve Levy of the Mothership. Seton, what is the poll question with Gretzky and Michael Jordan?
Whose legacy is more cemented, Michael Jordan or Wayne Gretzky?
It's a good question. I think it's Gretzky's is more cemented because there is now the fair argument of Jordan LeBron, and I don't think it matters how many goals Alexander Ovechkin scores. No one will ever say that someone other than Wayne Gretzky was the best hockey player of all time, unless you live in Boston, which then you say it's Bobby Orr. I get that, or Pittsburgh, Mario Lemieux, but I don't think there's any real argument other than Wayne. Whereas in the NBA now, there seems to be a legitimate argument.
Yeah, you look at the cultural impact of Gretzky, and I liken it to now you have Caitlin Clark, who is opening up the entire United States for WNBA teams. Now all of a sudden you have Boston once won, and Portland, and Gretzky did that when he came to Los Angeles. The fact that there was going to be hockey in Florida, and people are like, really? But that's because of Wayne Gretzky.
And the amount of youth hockey rinks that exploded and opened up. And I mentioned Bobby Orr, but, all over Massachusetts, people went wild for Bobby Orr and all of those things. And yes, Wayne Gretzky, Anaheim, obviously Los Angeles, all of those southern states, for a long time, We had a team in Arizona that didn't work out, but in the desert they were playing hockey, and the great example of that is DP is Austin Matthews. So he grew up in Arizona. He was at the game where Ovechkin scores what is many believe is the greatest single regular season goal of all time. On his stomach, on his back, twisting around. Austin Matthews is in the building for that game, for that Coyotes home game. And so whatever spurred him on, and so players are then exposed to it. The Caitlin Clark, it's a great example. You get to see her on TV. She's in Subway commercials, Allstate commercials, all these insurance commercials. And yeah, it has to capture the imagination and young people watching. And that was the great thing about the Four Nations, too, to go back to it. Like I heard from so many non-hockey people, Dan, right? And I mean, NFL types, people who would never give hockey the time of day, and were watching it and fell in love with it. And I go back to the fights, and people won't like this, but I think the Tkachuk fights on the Saturday night in Montreal, the 3 fights in 9 seconds really made the tournament. Look, people would have watched US-Canada. I get that. But that attracted a certain crowd. I know people were calling their buddies. You got to put this on with the hopes of maybe seeing it again, which we didn't. But I thought the fights had a great impact on the television rating and whatever. You're a hockey person. Who cares? Whatever it is to get you there. And now can the NHL harness that momentum? We had great games yesterday and the day before on ABC2. And now now here it comes, Dan, right? Here's the outdoor game in Columbus. Little Ohio State, Michigan flavor for you. Here's the trade deadline and the run to the playoffs and what I think is the best postseason in all of sports. So can this momentum keep going?
Why did they fight right away?
So there's a story that they had a group chat, like on a text chain that the Canadians, of course, are now making fun of after the tournament was over. But the two Tkachuks and JT Miller, who were out there, they had a chain. Hey, you go first. No, I'll go first. You go. Who's going to go first? All right, I'll take the first guy. You come after me. And it was, it was like right out of the Bash Brothers for the, the Mighty Ducks movie, right? And it was wild. I think they caught the Canadians off guard. The Tkachuks, they love being the villains up in Canada where they're booing the American national anthem. And although that sideshow is definitely going on and plays a role, and I think the Tkachuk brothers shook the place up. I think it shook everything up. It got everyone on board, and Canada didn't back down. And, they won one of the fights at least, I think. And but it seemed to galvanize the whole tournament and bring it together. And if you're asking, who's the face of hockey in the U.S., I think it's Matthew Tkachuk. And the downside of the Four Nations, Dan, and this is, the only negative to this whole great tournament, we don't know when Matthew's coming back. He plays for the defending Stanley Cup champs, and there's talk he might not come back this season. So, you don't want the All-Star game where the guys aren't trying hard, but when guys are out there killing each other,
I know.
you get real injuries. Shea Theodore hurt himself, Vegas's top defenseman, and there are Charlie McAvoy of Boston. We don't know when he's coming back. So that's the risk versus reward in a tournament like this.
You ever been hit by a puck while on the job?
On the job, no, I have not, because I've never been in that in-between spot between the benches. But I played back in the day, Dan. I was a feared center. I
Really?
led my team in penalty minutes every year. Now, wearing a full cage, of course, to protect the moneymaker, as you know.
You want to protect your hair, Steve.
Still looking all right. Not bad, Dan.
It looks pretty good.
For not 60, let's put it that way.
Oh, wow. That
closing in.
The hair looks like it's 60 or so.
Just happy to have some, quite frankly.
Yeah, I remember in the day, though, on SportsCenter.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had good moss.
It was darker.
Yeah. I had mine. I think mine was puffier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you do that on purpose? Or?
No. And I don't know if it cost me a job at Fox, but I interviewed for their pregame show, and I was with David Hill, then president of Fox Sports. We're in Arizona, Super Bowl, big, secret meeting. I'm gonna join Fox. I'm gonna be their pregame football guy, and I meet with David Hill, having lunch. I think it's going great, and then he says, 2 words for you. Cream rinse. And then he got up and left. And I didn't know what that meant other than cream rinse. to conditioner to keep your hair, from getting too. So I said to my wife, she goes, "How did it go?" And I go, "I don't know. He said 2 words to me at the very end. He goes, cream rinse." And she goes, "Oh, he's probably making fun of your hair." I go, "What?" So I didn't get the job.
I wouldn't have gotten the joke either, by the way, at that time.
Well, I'm thinking it's a legitimate meeting. He's in quiet. He says, "Oh, I ran it by everybody on the dais. You're really, really well liked. Howie loves you and Terry." And I go, "Okay, all right, good, I'm good. All right. And then 2 words for you, cream rinse." Never heard from him again.
I think that's changed over the years because bald seems to be in now. Bald seems to be beautiful. A lot of successful bald guys on TV.
Yeah. If I look like Messier, then I would do it.
Right.
But I don't look like Messier. So
he looks great in a helmet. He's still got that great forehead too. You know what I mean? Forehead. He looks tough, man. Back in the day, you want to Google a guy, international play too, by the way. Google some Marc Messier for you. Elbows and just taking people out.
Okay. Gretzky's the greatest scorer of all time.
Yeah.
Is he the greatest player of all time?
I think he is. And, sitting next to Mess just, can you imagine being the second guy, Dan, all the time? Like your entire life, Gretzky, Messier, that kind of thing. And Mess defers to Gretz. Actually, they have such a beautiful relationship because every time, and I watch Gretz on TNT all the time, and he always, the first guy he throws out, well, Mark did for us, what Messier did for us, and they've got this great thing, and maybe that's part of the hockey. There's no ego, and team first and all about the team and all that thing. I have heard that Messier is considered the greatest leader in all of sports, which is quite the compliment. The weighty C on the hockey sweater that you don't see in the other sports. But no, I think Gretz is the greatest player of all time. I don't think there's any question.
Yager, best hair of all time.
He's still playing. Dan, he's still playing competitive hockey. That's crazy. You want to see thighs on a guy, buddy?
No, I don't.
Thighs.
Not really. But thank you though. Thanks.
Big hockey pants. Big hockey pants.
That was my nickname in high school. Big hockey pants. I didn't even play hockey. I was big hockey pants.
Yeah.
Great to talk to you again.
Always a pleasure, Dan.
Thank you, Leaves. That's Steve Levy, ESPN NHL play-by-play man. 4 Nations. I didn't realize we weren't going to do it again. Damn.